y'all, welcome back to Biblically Blonde. In this video, we're going to talk about Genesis 16, which is the story of Hagar and Ishmael. So keep watching. Alrighty, y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name's Lacey. If you're new to Biblically Blonde, I am the face of Biblically Blonde. So if you've been here for a while or you're new, I've actually done a Biblically Blonde on this story before. Back when I first started my channel, I had a kind of a smaller idea of what I wanted Biblically Blonde to be. And so I would do 3 to 5 minute videos where I would tell different Bible stories, which is basically a smaller condensed version of these Bible guides. So I'll link that down below. It is really funny, and I have some good quirks in there about how I think it's ridiculous that Sarah came up with this idea and that Abram went along with it. So go check that out. I go over the full story. In these Bible guides, we're going chapter by chapter, so I don't finish the story of Hagar, Sarah, and Abram. I don't finish it because it's going to come along in a few chapters to come. So that will not be fully finished in this video. But if you want to see the whole arc of the story, go check out that video in the description box and you can kind of get a full idea of the entire story arc. Alrighty, so now that we got that all of the way, let's just get started with what happens in Genesis 16. And it's titled Hagar and Ishmael. So we learn right off the bat that Sarai still has not been able to conceive any children through Abram. Now you're probably wondering, who are these people? If you're brand new to the Bible, these were the names of Abraham and Sarah before they were changed. And so this is before God has changed in their name and put a new covenant upon them. And so they are still going by Sarai and Abram, yet they are in relationship with God. God has come to Abram a few times now, and he has declared him that he is going to be the father of many generations, that through him and Sarah together, they are going to start a generational line and live in this area of Canaan. So God's given them a little bit of promises each time as they walk this journey with him. And so he has promised them a son, and yet it's years and years later, and there is no son. Sarai has still not been able to conceive. She's now in her late 70s, and she's past the childbearing age. This is not something that's going to happen for her. Abram's near 90, and it just looks like this is not going to happen. So in her desperate need to provide an heir for her husband, she decides to have her Egyptian slave, Hagar, sleep with Abram. Abram doesn't really object, which is really interesting, and definitely a play on what happens when Eve goes to Adam. Now that's a whole separate video about the kind of dismissiveness of this sin, but it's important here to notice, not in a man-hating way, but just to be honest in the fact that Abram had the final say in this and he agreed to it. So I think a lot of blame gets put on Sarai here about allowing this and this being her idea. But as the head of the household, Abram did not object. And so what we see is Abram sleeping with Hagar. She does conceive a son, and through that son we have Ishmael, which means God hears. Now, during the point of her pregnancy, we learn that Sarai gets very jealous and upset over the fact that Hagar is bearing Abram a son, or a child, just in this regard, any child. And she gets very upset and mistreats Hagar. Which obviously, of course she does. She didn't really think out this plan. She was like, oh, this is a great plan. And then when the plan actually happens, she realizes that, this was not that great of an idea. So Hagar, being mistreated, decides to run away. And in her kind of running away, she's, somewhere out in the wilderness, God appears to her, an angel of the Lord, and he basically says, I see you, I hear you, you will have a son, you will name him Ishmael, I will remember him, and I will remember you. He gives kind of this two-sided prophecy, which is really interesting to me because, sorry, that's my dog, he just came in here. So anyway, he gives this two-sided prophecy of, you're going to have a son, congratulations, he's going to be awesome, but he's also going to be a wild donkey of a man, and all of his ancestors to come are going to kind of be at odds with each other, and there's going to be a lot of animosity and just not that great of an environment. And so you're thinking, okay, this is a weird, prophecy. Thanks for my son. I'm really happy. I'm really happy you remember me. And thanks for the not so good part. And so we'll get into that, but that's kind of the end of Genesis 16. Hagar does have Lego. My dog is being so loud right now. I cannot. He has a cone on his head because he has he has an issue with his paw, and he's literally walking around shaking this cone while I'm trying to film this video. I'm sure none of you care, but anyway. Okay, so that's what happens in Genesis 16. Hagar does give birth to Ishmael, and she goes back and lives with Sarai and Hagar. We will see Hagar and Ishmael again in a few chapters, but that's where we leave it in Genesis 16. So why does this happen? Well, this happens to show us that consequences can be really significant to small sins. You know, we look to the story of Adam and Eve, which is Genesis, at the beginning of Genesis, and we see that one man's actions affected the rest of eternity. You want to talk about large consequences, right? Well, the same can be applied here to Abram. Abram and Sarai are loved and cherished by God. He has fulfilled his covenant with him 4 times, 1,000 times over here today. There are many religions that call upon the name of Abram as the father of their religion. And so God's promise has come true. And yet when we look to Ishmael and his prophecy, we also see that that has come true. There are many people that regard Ishmael as the true son of Abram. And there has been a lot of strife over who is the true son, Ishmael or Isaac. Now, I'm not going to go too far down that path because honestly, I'm not a scholar in the Ishmael Isaac philosophy and when it regards to more of the Arabic religions and things like that. So I don't ever want to speak on something that I'm not 100% up to date on, I'm not 100% knowledgeable on. But what I will say, if you want to know more about how many people regard Ishmael as the true son and how that has affected Islamic religions and things like that, just do a basic Google search. I did a basic Wikipedia search, read a few videos, I read a few articles, watched a few videos, and I know a little bit, but I'm not 100% versed on it, so I don't want to speak on it. But what I will say is that the consequences for Sarai's actions were great, because now, even today in 2020, we have this differing opinion, these different religions having different views on who the true son of Abraham is. And I'm sure that when she decided to do this and have Abram sleep with Hagar, she wasn't thinking about the fact that in 2020 there'd be all this strife, and for centuries after there'd be people who really disagree and go to war with each other and just really do not believe that one thing is true versus another. So that was not on this girl's mind. All she wanted was to give her husband a son. And so she went around God instead of having faith in his timeline. And so it's just really interesting to me how, we need to understand that even if we think it's not a big deal, our sin has great consequences. So the why of it, remember, consequences happen to our sins. So then also, what does this tell us about God? What can we learn about him? Well, this is my favorite one to always answer. God is so good. He is so good. And I love this story because he sees the mistreated. Yes, you feel bad for Sarai in this story because she can't have children. And I don't feel bad for Abram at all. He gets to sleep with, another woman. So I don't even feel bad for Abram. But I do feel bad for Sarah. However, who I really, really feel bad for is Hagar, because this is someone who's truly innocent in this matter. From what we can learn, she's an Egyptian slave. She really is just doing what she is told, and she's being mistreated by her master or her mistress, and then she's forced to sleep with a man that's many years older than her. She's forced to sleep and bear his children. That's not right. And when I read that, my heart just hurts for Hagar, and the fact that she was so mistreated that she tried to escape and walk away from Sarai. It just really hurts my heart. But what I love about God is that he sees her. He sees the mistreated. He saw that Hagar was innocent in all of this. Hagar had nothing to do with Sarai's lack of faith. She had nothing to do with God's kind of divine plan and making Sarai and Abram wait for years and years to have Isaac. She was an innocent bystander in this, and God saw it. And so when the angel of the Lord comes to her, he shows that he hears her. Ishmael's named God hears, and he protects her, and he promises her that he will not forget about her. And so yes, there's consequences, and there's things that happen, and the prophecy, the kind of two-sided prophecy, does come true. But Hagar herself, the personal person, let's not think about years and years to come, but her as a person, God sees her and he takes mercy on her and he shows her grace. So then how can we apply the story of Hagar and Ishmael in our daily life? Well, I think this has been done to death. Any women's Bible study, you have the story of Sarai, and wait on God's timing. We need to apply. We need to not make things into our own hands. And yeah, I'll say the same thing. When Sarai decided to act without waiting on God's timing, she doubted God's faith, and she took things in her own hands. There were consequences that she couldn't even begin to understand for generations to come. And there were own consequences in her own personal life. She had to watch her husband have a son with another woman. That was hard. That was very difficult on her. So yeah, we can apply that in our daily life. Are we allowing God to make the decisions for us? Are we allowing God to let us, decide our life? Or are we deciding our life for ourselves? Are we making plans? Are we deciding everything? Are we saying, God, I'm going to be still and I'm going to let you take the driver's seat? Jesus, take the wheel. Alrighty, so that was the story of Hagar and Ishmael. There's a lot to it. I feel like this one is very well known. Nothing new here. A lot of people, even if you're not very scholared on the Bible or Genesis, you know about the story of Hagar, Abraham, and Sarai. So I hope I helped a little bit if you were unclear on things. I hope this brought you closer to the Lord, and I can't wait for next video. We're going to go into Genesis 17. So I'll see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and I'll see you later. Bye.